Welcome back. So, in last week's episode, we started to work on our sort of twirl replacement application, if you will, so that we can make a nice native multi-client Twitter-ish application. And we learned how to access the Twitter API, and through the Twitter API to get the public timeline, parse it into a table view, and display to the user. Which is all fine and nice if you're actually interested in the thousands of messages that are posted to Twitter every minute. But most people aren't. So it would be nice if they could get their public timeline, or their friends' time instead, rather. So in this week's episode of Hot Cocoa, we're going to learn how to create a login window sheet that we can use to get their login information. And we will learn how to save that keychain so we can get it back later, and then send that information to the Twitter API so you can get their friends' timeline. Coming up on Hot Cocoa, episode 8. To begin, again, with our Twitter application, among other things, we need to open back up our project called TweetApp. And if you'll notice, I have added all of these nice comments explaining each and every step to the one that's on the website. So if you go and download it from the website, you get all these nice comments. So the first thing we need to do is go and create our sheet or panel that's going to be opened when we need to prompt the user for their username and password. So we go into our interface here. I'll hide Xcode in the back there. And in our library, go to library. We're going to need a button so that we can actually open the window. So search for a button. And I'm going to use this one so it matches the other one we have there. I find that the rounded rectangular buttons as opposed to the shiny glossy buttons, they look better when you have like a gray background that has no shiny blue stuff in it. So that's why we're going to use this. Call that login. And then we need to make a new window, because you can have more than one window in any one particular main menu.zib file, or any zib file for that matter. So we've just created a new window here, and in this new window we're going to need 2 labels, 2 text fields, a checkbox, and a button. So let's get our labels first. Here's one label. Call that username. And then another label. Call that password. There we go. And then we're going to need some text fields. And we're going to need 1 regular text field. Oops. There we go. And then we're going to need 1 secure text field, which for the password, it turns everything into little dots. Line that up. There we go. And we're going to need a button. And again, I'm going to use this one because we have no shiny blue elements, so it looks nicer. Also, it's smaller. So login. And just make that resize there so we have room for the last thing. Line everything up. Like so. And the one last thing that we need is a checkbox. So we're going to add right there. And a checkbox is actually just a special type of an NS button. So this and this are actually the same object. This is just a special type. So we're going to name that save to keychain. And let's spread this out like so. Actually, let's keep this resized over here. And then I'll just stretch these out. There we go. Alright, now everything should be lined up pretty well. Okay, so we'll resize that down, and then in our inspector here, I'm going to click on the window, and under its attributes, there we go, click under the title bar, not on the actual window. So if you click on the title bar, I want to turn off resizing, so you can't resize it, because there's really no point in resizing this unless you have a ridiculously long username. And then we can save this. There we go. And I'm just going to hide Interface Builder for now. If it'll let me, it won't let me, so we'll just switch back to Xcode. And then hide others. There we go. Because we're going to need to go back there in just a second to hook up our outlets. So for outlets, we're going to need an NS window outlet so we can talk to the actual shade. So NS window, and we're going to call it login window. And we need an outlet for the NS text field. And we'll call that user name field. And we need an IB outlet for the NS secure text field. And we're going to call that password, or pass field. There we go. And we also need an IB outlet for the NS button, which is our checkbox, which I'm going to call save keychain checkbox. Okay. And we need one more thing down here, which is a Boolean value, which I'm going to call password known, which I'll show you when we write the actual implementation what we're going to use that for. Then we need to implement some more actions here, which are going to control the opening and closing of our login window. So we need an IB action called show login window. And we'll do the id sender. And then we need an IB action called end login window. Or you can name it close login window or whatever you want. Oops. Sender. And we will save that, and we can head back into Interface Builder and start to link these. And the first thing that we need to do is link this button here to the show login window, and then we need to link this here to the end login window. And let's see, hook up our outlets here. So we have our username field, our pass field, and our save keychain box, and of course also to the window itself, login window. There we go. And finally, we want to make our app controller the delegate for the username text field here, so that we can determine when the user is done entering text. So drag that, have the text field selected here, drag the delegate over there, and that'll make that the app controller the delegate of the NS text field, so it'll send us events when stuff happens. So go ahead and save that, and now we need to implement the to get and or the show and end actions for our little sheet. So first we're going to do IB action show login window, and I can actually explain this as I go because this code is actually relatively short. Oops. And the show login window action is actually going to only contain one method, and that's the begin sheet And if we hit escape, we want to select, see, this one here. Begin sheet modal for window, modal delegate, didn't select your context info method. And the sheet is going to be whatever we named the outlet for a window, which in this case was login window. And we'll fill that in for us. The modal for window is going to be what window the box is going to show up on top of, which in this case is our main window. And we can get that by doing sender window, which basically the sender is whatever object. If you see sender up here, the sender is whatever object sent that message, which in this case would be the button. So this is basically asking the button, hey, what window are you in? And since it's in our main window, it's the login button, that's going to tell the modal for window that we want to show it up on the main window there. Then our modal delegate will be nil, our didn't selector will be null, and our context info will be null. In that there, and I'm just gonna do this to make it neater and easy to read, and add our end bracket in there. And then for our end login window, login window, id sender. For here, this is where we're going to actually implement the keychain getting and saving. But for now, just to test that our window works, we're going to add NSApp end sheet and then login window again. And we need to tell the login window that it's going to leave. So we'll send it order out sender. So it knows what's telling it to go away. So we'll build this and go, and with any luck, it'll pop up our, oops, it popped up down there. Why did it do that? Modal for window, sender, window. That's all correct. Oh, I know why. One more thing that I forgot to do. If you go back into Interface Builder, we need to make sure this window here is not set to be visible at launch. So if we go back, save that, build and go again, and it's still visible at launch. What are you doing, application that is making me look stupid? Come on. Inspector, window, visible at launch is off. I did, in fact, save this. There we go. And now it pops up. So, pops up, pops down, pop up, pop down. Alright, now that we have that done, the next thing we need to do is implement keychain saving for our password. And basically how keychain saving works is the keychain, as you're probably familiar with from other applications, allows you to save usernames and passwords for both websites and for applications. And because it's actually a Carbon class, it was inherited from the older version of OS X and not from NextStep like Cocoa was, we're actually going to use a Cocoa wrapper for it, which gives us a much cleaner way of accessing the keychain, because the keychain is very complex. Not only does it store passwords and usernames and things, but it can also generate certificates, which you'll see when we get into getting to run your iPhone apps on the actual iPhone, which should be in another episode. And it can do security verification and all sorts of things. But for just saving and retrieving keychain items, we're going to use a simple Cocoa wrapper class, which is right here, which is you can get it from extendmac.com, and it's called EM Keychain, EM for Extend Mac. And this is going to basically provide us with some nice, simple, easy methods to access the keychain, basically. So you want to download this here, and I'll download it to the desktop. I can close Safari, and we open EM Keychain here, and we have here the 4 source code items here and a README. Really, they really want you to read the README, but it's the same text that's on the website, so we don't really need to do. And we need to add these to our project. And to do that, I'm going to create a new group under classes here. So I'm going to go right-click, add new group, which is just a folder. We'll call this EM Keychain. And that's, you don't have to do that. It's just to keep things more organized. And then we want to take these 4 source code items here and drag them into that folder there. And this will pop up and say, yes, we do want to copy it into our project folder. And we want to click add, and that'll add them into our project. Now, in order to use these, we need to do 2 things. First, we need to reference them in our appcontroller.h, so we need to import them. And basically, that's going to say, it's going to tell the compiler, if you can't find this method within this header, go look in one of these other headers, because it's probably in there. So, call this EM Keychain item.h and import EM Keychain proxy.h. And we can save that. And by the way, the difference, as far as I know, between having these little, whatever you call them, less than and greater than marks here, and the quotation marks, is if it's these marks, it's going to be in one of these frameworks. If it's quotation marks, it's going to be in your actual project. So speaking of frameworks, in order to access the keychain, we need to add the security framework, which we can do by going to frameworks here, right-clicking, going to add, and add an existing framework, and then under the frameworks folder here, we want to go down, scroll. As you can see, there's a lot of different frameworks you can use in your application. We want to add the security framework. Go, and then hit add. And now I can use the security framework to access the keychain. Now, as I said earlier, our end login window is where we're going to be handling some of the getting and setting, or more specifically, the setting for our keychain. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is make an if statement, and this is where our checkbox comes in. So if save keychain checkbox state, and this will tell us, this is actually the same for any button. It'll tell us whether it's on, whether it's off, or whether it's mixed. And if you look in other applications, you'll see on means it's checked, off means it's not checked, and mixed means it's sort of checked, but instead of having a check, it has a line through it. Like if you have sub items under that and you only select some of them, that's when it will be a mixed state. So we want to see if the user has checked that they actually do want to save it. So we're going to see if its state is set to in its own state, and we want to make sure we don't already know the password, because if we already know the password, then we don't want to reset it. Equals no, unless the user wants us to set it. And we now need EM Keychain proxy and shared proxy. And with this, we're going to go add generic keychain item for service. Basically, what this doing is here is it's sending a message to the EM keychain proxy, which is the class that's allowing us to access the keychain, which is up here in the EM keychain proxy. And we're going to add a generic keychain item for service. And our service name is a string which identifies our particular application. So in this case, we'll call it tweet app. And with username is going to be the username that we want to add. And by the way, when you have these sort of preset little spaces for entering things here, to tab between them, you can hold down Control and hit the / key, the one that's to the left of the right Shift key, at least on a US keyboard. And our with username is going to be username field, string value, and our password is going to be pass field, string value. There we go. And close all of that up. And once again, just to make this easier to read, I'm going to enter those down there. And let's see, do we need anything else? Not at the moment. So that's going to save our whatever the user enters there into the keychain. Now, one other thing that we need to do is load the value from the keychain. And that's why we made AppController the delegate of the text box. Because if we make it the delegate of the text box, then we can implement the control texted end ending method, which is one of the delegate methods if you look it up in the documentation. So control text did end editing, and because this is one of the predefined methods, we don't need to declare this in our header file, and it's going to return as notification, which we will simply send to ND because we don't really need it. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new EM generic keychain item, call it keychain item, very original. And we're going to create that by sending a message to EM keychain proxy, shared proxy, and we want to get the generic generic keychain item for service with username. And you'll notice we can't just say, hey, what did I store in that particular keychain? You have to know the username. And that's why we're putting this in the control texted end editing for the username. So what we're going to do is when the user is done entering their username, we're going to take that username and see if there's already a password stored for that username. And if so, then we're going to fill in the password for them. So we need to set our service here, which is tweet app. That's the service we saved it under up here. And then for username, we're going to set that to username field string value. Scroll over, string value, and then that will create us a keychain item which has the password in it. So then we need to create an string called password, and in that we will get the password from the keychain item, and then we want to check and make sure if the password is not nil, which means if there actually is a password saved for that username. We then want to pass field, set string value. We want to set the password onto the field and set password known to yes. That way we know that we know the password and we don't try and set it if it's already known. And by the way, one more thing up here, we want to default this to false or no. Either will work. They mean the same thing. Save that. Save that. So now we've gone and saved our password. Well, that doesn't do much good if we can't actually get the friends timeline. So we need to create another method here, which will be called return void, or return nothing rather. And we're going to get friends timeline for username, and that we need to enter in a string called username and pass, which is an NS string called password. And by the way, you'll notice we have all these asterisks here, and I've verbally stopped to explain them, so I suppose now is just as good a time as any. Basically, what these asterisks here indicate is that all of these names here, timeline view, progress, login window, username, pass, they're not actually objects. We refer to them like they are just because it's more convenient. But what they really are, they're pointers to where that object is in memory. And this asterisk here indicates that they're pointers to an object and not an actual object. But since we never really work directly with the object, we just sort of talk about the pointers like they're the actual object. So what this is telling it here is it's going to return a pointer to an NS string, or we're going to send this method a pointer to an NS string, and it's going to put that in username. So we can copy and paste this code, or the header there, whatever you want to call it, into, let's put it above the get public timeline. Paste that into there, do that. And set that up like so. And in our get friends timeline for username, I'm just going to copy and paste the same code that we used for the get public timeline, because it's actually the same. In an actual implementation, I'm sort of just doing this to save time, but in an actual implementation, what you'd normally do is you'd make a Twitter API class, and you'd have one method that would do both of these. So you'd tell it whether you want to get the friends timeline or not. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to copy and paste the code into here. And we need to change our URL string so that it includes the username and password. And to do this, we're going to change it to NS string with format. And since this works using HTTP authentication, which is basically means like if you were typing this into a web browser, the way you'd type it would be username pass at twitter.com, and that would allow you to get your friends timeline, which we changed to friends timeline here. And we're going to use string with format to take the values that we loaded into our text fields and put them into here. So we're going to use the %, which means we want to stick an NS string in that location, and another %, put one there. And then now at the end here, we want to put in username, oops, that should be a comma, username, and the password there. And you'll see here that that'll put this in there, there to there, and there to there. And that should be all we need to do. Oh, I guess it would be a good idea to implement that. So up in the login window, now we can actually call this. So let's see, you're going to call it to self, and let's see, get friends timeline. And the reason this isn't filling this in for me is because I didn't save app control at H. So let's go and do that now. And it should fill it in for me now. Get friends, there we go. Get friends timeline for a username, and we're going to pass the username field string value, and for our password we're going to pass the pass field string value. And with any luck, that should work. If we go to save all, syntax error before NS state. What did I do wrong here? Oops. That should be double equals and double equals there. Yeah. Now it should work. Or not. What's wrong? We have a lot of stuff wrong. Password. And we're back. So I figured out what was going wrong. It was a very, very simple typo in that I did not, when I wrote this, the control texted int editing method, I didn't close it. I didn't include this last little bracket there. So I got very, very confused. And for whatever reason, it doesn't like it when I declare Boolean values up here in the header, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So now that we've gotten that all figured out, let's build and go. Log in, and I'll enter my username here, 63, and you'll notice that I've already have it saved in here, so it automatically loaded it. And go to saved keychain, hit login, and ta-da! There is my friend's timeline. Now, in a complete implementation, for one, this would move over there, and for two, we need to find a much better way to refresh the friend's timeline, because there's no get friend's timeline button. You just have to keep going up to login, which isn't ideal to say the least. So, what we'll be covering in our next edition of the of our Tweet app application, which may be coming out the week after next. I think I'm going to take a break from the Tweet app for a second to go over getting your iPhone application to run on the iPhone itself, because I tried doing that a little while ago and I had a heck of a time because Apple's documentation is not as complete as I think it should be. So we're going to go over that next week, and then the week after next, what we're going to do is go over how to use NS user defaults to save the usernames that we know, so that we can provide a drop-down box of the usernames that we know and have them picked from a drop-down box, instead of having to type in their username before we can get their timeline. So that is the week after next, on the next time that we work on the Tweet app on Hot Cocoa. See you then.